All right, let's think about a cash flow hedge model. So we're dealing still in FX, but now we want to deal with a cash flow hedge of foreign exchange. Okay. So the easy one is, right? We'll go easy. Is an anticipated transaction. I am going to buy inventory at some date in the future at some price in pesos, Mexican. Okay? How do you naturally account for this transaction? How do you account for an anticipated transaction? You don't. No recording. But I have risk. And what's my risk? I've got two risks. I've got the risk of the price of the inventory. I've got risk one, inventory price risk. And risk two, I've got the FX risk. Very similar to the fair value hedge discussion we had, where we had a firm commitment for a specific price, certain amount, and that price was denominated in a foreign currency. Here, we're just thinking about it. And remember when we talked about anticipated transactions, you have to be able to document that it's going to be highly probable. So, but we can hedge this, and we can hedge one or both of these risks. If you can find a instrument that does both, that's great, but likely you may have to do both. And maybe in this case, we only care about the FX risk. And for our example, we only care about the FX risk. So this is going to be the hedged item. Now, here, hedge accounting makes a lot more sense versus the fair value hedge. If you watch the previous video on fair value hedging, I have a problem with the accounting literature forcing you down to hedge accounting for fair value hedges, because I think you get the same financial statement outcome whether you use 815-25 or whether you use 830-20. I think you get the exact same outcome because in 830-20, all of those foreign denominated transactions all have to be remeasured back to the functional currency, and any of the gains and losses in that remeasurement have to go through the income statement. So why bother? But here, with a cash flow hedge, I get this one. This makes sense because there's no recording here, but if I put on a derivative, what happens to the derivative, right? If I put on a derivative, or if I put on an on-balance sheet transaction, right? So this is one where you could do a derivative, or, right, I have to buy inventory, so why don't I actually buy the pesos now? Right? So I could do a derivative. So I could basically do the same forward contract to buy pesos, or I can buy the pesos. So I can either do a derivative off balance sheet, or I could buy the pesos. So cash pesos. That's on balance sheet. Right? in both of these cases, the accounting for this is the remeasured or fair value with changes in the fair value going through the income statement. Now, with the cash pesos, there's going to be a little bit of a different fair value here, right? A little bit of a different fair value because the cash pesos, there's not credit risk, right? If I have a derivative, I have a counterparty over here, there could be credit risk, there could be other things going on that might also affect the fair value. With the pesos, it's only going to be for the FX risk, right? There may be other things as far as calculating fair value that could come into the derivative. But let's take out of the equation here a discussion about the credit risk issues around the derivative contract. Right? So here I get why getting into a forward contract makes sense. Because if you use an on-balance sheet cash pesos, all you're going to do, right, for on-balance sheet perspective, the FX changes for the pesos are going to go through your income statement, right? But your anticipated transaction, no change. So as the pesos move, so will your income statement. So this makes more sense to get into a derivative to hedge this particular risk. So we can do the same kind of a contract. Now we'll run out of room here, so let's bring up another sheet. So we can do the same kind of contract. We're going to do a forward purchase, a forward contract to purchase pesos. Okay, that is the derivative. Right, that's the derivative. Sorry about that. There we go. That's the derivative. So that's our hedging instrument. The hedge risk is the anticipated transaction. Buying inventory using pesos. So again, this is if the amounts are the same, if the notional amount of the forward contract is the same as the amount of pesos that I'm thinking about buying this for, I should be fine. Right? It should be effective. So this is probably an effective relationship, and I just need to document all of that. Now, this forward contract doesn't go through the income statement. Because if we didn't get hedge accounting, it would go through the income statement. This forward contract doesn't go through the income statement under a cash flow hedge. The fair value and the changes in fair value go to OCI. So you can see why this makes sense to go and get hedge accounting for a cash flow hedge. Fair value hedge, I'm not sure what you get out of that. But for a cash flow hedge, this makes a lot of sense.